And I want you to know, this is the part of the experience that most people would say, this is, you think, no way, this didn't happen, it's all in your head or something, right? And I have corroboration of other people who've had the exact same experience in the same room. They've been to the same place and they've had the same type of experience there. So I'll show you that. So I want you to know that before we go into this space here. So, okay, I'm like, okay, we're going into this room. So what the room was, when we opened the door, and it's an archway. And it's glass. It's an archway going into a space. And this archway, I can only describe as being magical. It was glass, but black. It was like black glass. And it had the feeling of space inside of it, like outer space, but like mystical space. And there were light bands of light moving through it. And they were shimmery light bands. And I could feel them. They affected me. They touched me. They touched my heart. And I could feel the light. The bands were like butterflies, space butterflies. They felt like transformation or evolution, or they felt like there was an energy coming off of them. And it felt like an energy hitting me directly. And it was like an archetype of mystical gnomes and elves permeated this archway. It was a mystical archway, and it was giving me the symbol of evolution, spiritual evolution, butterflies, space butterflies, mysticism of the cosmos. It was a powerful sensation and feeling in this archway. And it opened up into an impossibly massive, white, empty space. It was football field length going in all directions. And I immediately understood that something was wrong because I could look back at the archway and it was football field length of distance just going off. So obviously something was off with this room. It was in dimensions. It also went in complete empty space underneath me. So I felt like I was walking on air, and it was this, and I was hyperventilating. And the room was having an effect on me. It was the light or the vibration was hitting me, and I could see light and things coming out of my hand. It was like reflections and lights was hitting me, and I was, what's going on? And but I felt amazing. I felt great. I felt good. I felt good from it. So I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And then the four of them line up. They all came in, the four beings and then her. And the four of them line up right in front of me. And then she lines up to my right. She's closer. She steps forward and says, what is about to happen is going to be beyond your comprehension. And she steps back. So basically what ends up happening is the room began to vibrate. And all the beings in the room began to vibrate. And so our cells began to vibrate. And then my cells disappeared, and light began bleeding through the cells, and we all dissolved. All of the energies, all of our body, physical matter pieces dissolved. And it seemed like my cells were removed or blown apart, and yet my awareness remained intact. And in my hypnotic regression, I'm just like, but it's a joy. It's a hyper state. It's an extreme state that they put me into, and all the energies in my extremities, my arms and my legs and my head and everything collapses into a ball. And it happens for them, and they all collapse into a ball, and it creates an instant state of elation. And I was bursting out laughing, and but like extreme elation, and my consciousness experienced a powerful surge of energy. I was transformed into this ball thing. I was floating, and it felt amazing. And there was unity. There was this. The room was alive, and you were in unity, alive with the room. And my identity merged in this. I became this. I was not my own awareness. My awareness had expanded out, yet I still remained as a thing, an identity. And I could feel the largest and most complete presence of myself as part of my surroundings. There was unity with the wall. There was no walls, but I could feel the room. I could feel in unity with the room. And I'm just in this, my hypnotic regression is my favorite because I'm really just balls out in joy, like, ah, ah, screaming and and I was crying from the ecstasy. And we all just merged with each other in this feeling of unity. My consciousness was raised and I felt like a new me was born. But it was also joy. It was fun, and these beings got it. Like they were instantly whooshing as little orbs. They were flying all over the place, and they were filled with freedom. They were filled with elation. The whole thing was filled with joy and ecstasy and unity. But it had a sense of play, childlike. It was like they were all children, and we were children. And the thing is the most important and powerful part of it all is that they weren't aliens anymore, and I wasn't a human anymore. We were just these core energies, and we were just flying around. And it was this hyper state of joy and elation. And the beings were whooshing, swooshing, shimmering lights. There were lights coming off and sparkling out. And I saw orbs of pink, orange, and yellow. I stopped being me, and I was just like there was an erosion of my identity. That was the wild. I became pure energy, elated, and they became pure energy, and they were elated, and then it was just playing. And it was just this empty space, and we flew around, and I was crying and laughing, and in this hyper joy and hyper ecstasy and hyper unity. And there was a dazzle. Yeah, the lights were penetrating. It was a weird effect. It was a space effect that was weird. That wasn't normal space because the light seemed to penetrate my being as it was shined out in flashes. And so then there was this weird thing that they were doing, and I realized I could do it too. We could spin. So we were flying around. Oh my God, this was so exciting. And then when you get close to them, you could spin around and you would get into a unity state with them. And then you would fly apart and you would like share beinghood. It was like, you would go into unity with them, and you were like, oh my God, and it was so fun, and they were laughing. These aliens with straight faces, weird eyes, weird heads, were laughing. They were laughing in this energy form. And we could get close and spin. The closer we merged until eventually we merged completely, the process seemed to share our deep hearts. And I experienced bliss and joy within unity as I discovered an absolute purity of myself. So it was the childlike thing, and they ooze this childlike naturally, and this is a space where they clearly they live in this space. The spinning excited me so much, I was laughing with having no body to laugh with. It was, I loved this experience, so I'm trying to get these words. I loved this experience. These guys were my new best friends. There was a connection with them. I connected with them. They were no longer scary. Everything was just us all together. The best part, they were in joy and laughing too. They had joy. They had laughter with themselves. This was so amazing that I could feel them laughing and enjoy also. I'm going to change up how I deliver this. I'm going to play my hypnotic regression tape, and I'm going to not talk so I can try to make this as lived for you as possible.
Okay, there's like something's happening to the entire room. What? There's that. Why did it fell apart? What?
Are you losing your body or? That's okay. It's new experience. Yeah.
All my stuff. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my God. This is so amazing.
What's the feeling?
I'm one with it all. I'm one with the room.
Oh, yeah.
And them and they want to play. They just, it's so...
Overwhelming.
Yeah, but it's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all this joy, there's all this movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not aliens. They're not aliens.
No.
They're not aliens. They're not aliens. They're not aliens. They're beings. They're like me. I'm like them. We're all like just things. Oh my god, I can't see the lights. It's so insanely amazing. It's so amazing. The lights, they're so shimmery. Wow. Wow. We spin.
Yeah.
We spin. I can focus on them. I can focus on them individually.
Yeah.
And when I do it, I can see them. I can see their beinghood. I can and we share in each other's experience.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. Wow. I can fly to any space in the room. I can move around.
You're free.
They're enjoying it. They're laughing. I'm laughing. I can never see them laughing because this is how they are clearly normally.
But they express everything through their eyes.
Oh, this is so amazing. But it's so amazing. Okay.
So now, before I further on talk, I want to show you how my experience matches exactly someone else's experience. So clearly these beings use this room, and this is actually a real space for them. This isn't just some trippy thing that they put in my head. This is a real deal experience, and that is real for them. So, okay, again, I mentioned very earlier on, I'm not a UFO alien guy. And this was actually the only book I ever picked up. I don't have any abduction books in my house. I've done online research for my story, for my book, but as far as my ownership, this is the only one I bought because it called to me and I knew it had some answers for me. And I really think Susie Hansen herself is a lifetime contactee, and so she's been having experiences all her life. And so her book is really powerful, and I really loved it, Dual Soul Connection. So she experienced the White Room in 1989, only 4 years before me. So I experienced mine in 1993. Susie experienced it under different circumstances than myself. So for me, I was like a guinea pig. I was like, for me, they wanted me to experience it and then use that experience as part of this thing that they were going to do with me. For her, they actually were like, this is what we do. And they were showing it to her, and they were explaining it to her, why they come to this room, what this room is all about for her. The beings appeared to be learning, with Susie, they appeared to be learning how humans took to it, trying to figure out or understand how they took to the experience. They explained to her that this room was their relaxation. That this was their getaway from the strains of being in the body, and that she was glimpsing mankind's future. She also experienced the room was white and completely dimensionless, that when you walked on it, you were walking on air. And she also observed it was much larger than it, like me, like this sense of just football field length of just empty space going outwards. She also observed it was a massive, massive room. And she was told by them that the Greys have the ability to make space. That does match some people's contact experiences as well too. There are a couple of very famous contact ones where the ship appears to be 8 or 10 feet big, and then the human goes inside and it's a massive room. So clearly the Greys here, they say they have the ability to make space, that a room can be larger within a room than it appears on the outside. It doesn't look like her body dissolved like mine did. That's a very distinct piece. She was still a full body, but they dissolved. The grays dissolved into energy, and they were spinning, and they did the spinning thing. So this was a real thing that I experienced that actually happens in this environment. And she also had the same intense experiences that I did: ecstasy, unity, phenomenal joy. There were other humans in the room that were participating in this experiment or this trial or something, and they were bawling from the joy, the intense joy from this room. Also, the white room was vibed with this God, source of the universe type presence. I postulate that this is where quantum computers goes. This is what the whole thing is with these beings, is that they are just very, 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 very advanced in their quantum technology, and quantum will find, it will feel like a God feel eventually, because it's the source of, they described that to her, that this was their way of coming back to the source energy. And so they were aware of this, turning themselves into a source pure energy, and you could feel it in the room. The room had a God sense to it. It had a overarching, but it was mixed with like a quantum feel, like a technology. It was like technology, God, nature, all in one feel in this room. Susie noted that the experience in the white room, when she experienced it, was also to show that these beings are not unsimilar to ourselves. And in my hypnotic regression, I basically cry that they're not aliens anymore. I'm like 16-year-old, like, they're not aliens, they're just like me, and I'm bawling from the intensity of it all. And so, and she also experienced that the room, so the Greys use this room to project energy out with their minds. And they got her to try those experiments and project things out with your brain, and she could image things and they would form as real forms in this room. And I didn't experience that, but I saw the the female being that I ended up connecting with. She ended up starting to make herself a large shape. And I started noting when we were playing around, and all of a sudden she's making herself larger and larger. And so now, fortifying that this portion of my experience was very real, these beings, I have more to my story, and it goes even further into this craziness, beautiful craziness, but, you know, high strangeness, and they just kept going with the high strangeness. So the being that I was with turned herself into a giant vortex, and I was compelled to go in. She was like, come in, come in. There's this feeling of like, come in, come in. And then everything changes. The vibe changes. She just wants to show me something. So I saw a dead body. And over top of the dead body, I saw a sparkling and shimmering, beautiful light energy. And I immediately connected. I knew that I was looking at myself. I could feel it. I could feel that that thing was me. I could feel that what I was looking at was my past life, the last one I just had, and I had died already, and I was like I was the spirit looking over the dead body. And she shows me, this is the first thing she shows me. She shows me that, and I instantly am realizing that I am not Jeff Selver. I'm not this 16-year-old. I've been living on and on and on and on. And I can feel now, I can get it. I've been living on in a birth and death cycle, going on and on and on. And I was crying out of the joy and ecstasy that I say it here. It's me. I'm alive. I've been alive. I keep being alive. I'm just constantly alive. And I was experiencing this grand awareness from this realization while watching what I was watching, and she wanted me to see this. The beautiful lights was going somewhere. The shimmering lights was moving upwards and upwards. I was like, oh my God, I'm witnessing myself. This is insane. And then the energy stopped, and it goes into a dimensional spot. And it's the only way to understand what this actually was is the human version of the afterlife. So they want to show this to me. I could feel her behind me in this way being like, look, look, watch this, look at this. And I see this shimmering energy that I connected with go into like a dimensional portal. There was literally a veil, something separated this earth dimension from this afterlife dimension. I saw an actual intelligent created veil that separated these two realms. And then that shimmering thing became this different energy. Now, there's a strange synchronicity with beings and what I saw. Let me see if I can put this up over here. There was a dissemination of knowledge. Literally, this past life me became an image of a man with a beard and a long white gown. And I find that really wild because there's actually a contact event where a person had walked into a UFO. It's Alan Godfrey. His is a very famous one. And he sees a man with a beard and a white gown, and the man compels him to go lie down in the bed, and when he does, then all the grays come in. And and I feel that this imagery was her putting that in my head, this image of a man, but it's me. I can't explain it. That's my higher self. It's the me that builds my lives. And I was witnessing that being, and yet she was like controlling it, so I didn't have all the knowledge of that thing. I can't explain it. Maybe I might be overdoing it, but it was an epiphany for myself also that I was seeing the being who creates my lives, all of my lives, and it was as a personified, as an image of a man in a gown with a beard. And I was aware this was me. I evolved. I got it. I was understanding it all. But then this is where it all kicks in. As I was witnessing this higher self me, I see the grays come to this higher self me. And then I was like, oh my God, they're here. Those beings are in this afterlife realm. This is all of a sudden it was like making sense. Like this is where they are coming from, or they operate, or they're in this realm. So the realization that they're there hit me. So I really wish that I like this guy, but I want to put this in a place where I can keep it somewhere. The realization that they were here or are here now hit me. With my afterlife self, they saw an opportunity. And I understood these gray beings saw the way humanity was going. And I ended up getting this, I could feel things about this afterlife realm as I was witnessing it. And I was clear that what I was witnessing was the elder giving me cuts of what occurred between the death of my last life and the birth of my present life. And she wanted me to see this. Now, she clearly controlled it because I'm married to the same person for 20 years, and she's not in that image. I have a spiritual teacher I've been with for 20 years, and he's not in that image, but they really controlled what I saw, and they wanted me to see their interaction with my higher self. So it was very controlled, and I got to see some interesting things. I was aware that in some form, my afterlife self spent time learning about the grays. I never fully got their agenda. It's like, why does their agenda fully elude me? But the human destruction of the planet was affecting these afterlife realms. And I thought that was a really wild, realization which is actually logical. If we humans are destroying the ecosystem and the planet and the species, then beings coming into the planet will be affected for their ability to incarnate on it. So in a way that we weren't aware, humans are actually impacting these higher realms of beings who want to incarnate into Earth. I witnessed in the 40s and 50s, a group of grays, after coming up from Earth down below, acknowledged that humans made a choice about something that I couldn't grasp. And that choice seemed significant and affected these higher realms. It seemed like a specific event or moment occurred, and once it did, it was assured how the next decades would go. And then my higher self, in this response to this event, my higher self began building the life that is me. So that was a definitive connection, that these grays were interacting with humans in the 40s and 50s, that humans made a choice about something, and then the grays were confirmed about how the future would go. And then my higher self, working with the grays, was waiting for that choice to be made. So that choice was distinct, and it was a specific thing that affected, I guess, many beings, and me being one of them. Then when my higher self began planning this next life, I had a synchronicity about what I'm about to show you. So this is high strangeness, but I know that this is real. So my higher self saw this alien, what I call an alien DNA grid. I saw a large immaculate grid suspended in the air that aligned all the physical Earth bodies that have gray alien DNA. with the souls that are embodying in them. And this is the gray alien brilliance, that they are geneticists, biologists, yet highly, highly spiritual. And they are managing, controlling, if you will, they are meticulously keeping track in the back end, what we would call the back end. For them, this is where it's at. And it was clear they were keeping meticulous track of all the humans that have gray alien DNA. It looked to me, and here's what was a kicker too, there's hundreds of thousands of humans on Earth that have this DNA. I don't think that these are people who are being abducted. I think some of them could be abducted. I think some of them have purposes like I did. But I think there's tons of humans. And even in my own, this new realization that I've had, I've been doing my detective work, and I found 2 people alone in the last 2 or 3 weeks when I started reaching out and trying to figure out if this is true. And so if I could easily find 2 people in my circle, I think each one of us, for all we know in this group, has it, or they know someone very close who has it. And I think this is what's kind of going on, is that the Greys have been infiltrating their DNA. I get explained later why they're doing this. And they're doing it because for them, it's raising us, because consciousness, and because these guys are, anyway, it's more detail, but I'll explain that later. But this is what I end up seeing. Each of these dots were connected to the grid, showing how they played a part with the population as a whole. So as a spirit, you would go in and you would be like, okay, I want to find a group that matches what I'm looking for, that matches maybe the people that I incarnate with or whatever. So the higher self, they would go to this space and they were looking to find human bodies with which to match genetic lines with. And I saw in amazement how the Greys were masterminding. This was the whole thing. These guys are biologists and they're spiritualists, and they're masterminding the entire thing on the back end behind. I had a friend, another abductee who I met last weekend, and he said, you know what they told me? And I said, what? He said, they told me that there's going to be an invasion. I said, I believe it. He said, but not an invasion like War of the Worlds, not like that. And I said, oh no, and I was like, what about a gray alien DNA or an alien DNA grid where they're coming in on the back end? He said, that's more what it would be like. So this is what I think is actually happening. There's actually an invasion, and it's in the back end, and it's through DNA and it's through spirits. And we'll talk a bit about the spirit part as well too. I was aware this grid was planned out in the 1940s and 1950s and was designed because humans aren't listening to the Greys. That was a huge part of it too. The Greys and humans interacted with something. Humans said no, and then the Greys were basically like, this is the way we have to do it now. So then they began building. Maybe they had already laid the outline for it and then were anticipating, who knows, but the idea being is that this was in place because of some events that had occurred that solidified what the future would be. I had, while watching my afterlife self, I don't want to overwhelm this talk, but I had understanding about what I was witnessing with that afterlife self. And I knew that in the afterlife, your awareness can make other awarenesses. You can literally go into like 5 or 10 dimensions or places. You could go to Jupiter while focusing on your family on Earth, while going into other beautiful realms. And you would be full-bodied awarenesses, and you have that capability in the afterlife. Now, I became aware of that. I also saw that the nature of the universes is actually layers of lands, layers of dimensions stacked on top of one another. That if you looked into empty space, humans would just see blank space, but there would actually be dimensions there that other beings interact with, and I saw that clearly as well too. And then the focus became about me, this person, and my afterlife self building me. So my observation shifted to my afterlife self-awareness of Earth in the 1970s, and I was watching a scene in a room. And I was like, what the hell, my afterlife, this energy that must be my spirit, is literally in a UFO or something, or in a base or something, and interacting with the Greys. And I just was like, what? This is like crazy. It appeared that this room was on a physical ship, and there was a genetic line of the gray DNA, had gray DNA that my afterlife self liked. the genetic line fit what I wanted to accomplish and what the Greys wanted to accomplish. And in the background, I saw a Grey being working on the computer that had designing technology. Like these guys have the ability to help or build lives, to build the events that happen in your life. I thought that was crazy. And not crazy, but, you know, really powerful and wild. And I also saw the holographs I saw in the beginning, those cubes, those were in the background. And there was a being injecting where the Greys would interact with me into that. And then a weird event happens. If not enough weirdness has happened so far, I witnessed in my afterlife self produce it, like fire up an energy and basically expel this cocoon or this me. It was a me. It was like the outline of what I'd become in a physical body, but it was like an outline or an energy form. And it was placed on a table. And then the being who I had interacted with earlier pulls out her ethereal form and overlays it top of this being. And I understood there was a mold happening, a gel, an imprint of that being put into my energy. And there's a phenomenon in abductions called the dual souls. And I didn't know about it fully or understand it clearly, and I had no idea I'd actually seen it until I'd come across this hypnotic regression. But I started to suspect I was a dual soul from just how wild that event was that I had in 1997. And this was the event confirming me that I saw that as a 16-year-old. And so there's this overlay, and I have basically this energy in me that is her that she can witness. And it was an agreement, so they could witness from the inside out. And yeah, and so it also allows me to connect to her, so I can feel her and I can actually connect to her, and she can witness things. And it played a part in my earlier contact events. Basically, I become a bubble. I see my mom. I'm placed inside the womb, and then it's this correlation of being born in that vision and basically being spit out from that dimensional portal that the elder or this being had put me into, and I get spat out back in the white room. My body forms, and I'm blown away. But the first thing that comes to my brain is I now understood who controlled my body. It was this this understanding that that my spiritual awareness, like in the human body, we feel like my ability to move my hand and touch and to move my body is coming from the brain. But I was very aware that the energy of my awareness is my spirit, and it is the one moving the body. It's the one that feels in the hand. It's the one that moves, and everything else is like the tool. I could feel it, and I was like, no longer was I ever convinced that I knew that the spirit was the one governing the movement of my body. And I was staring at my hands in this white room, and then that's it. They file out. I'm kind of in a state of shock, but they are trying to get to the next thing. So we file out of the white room, and when we file out, I actually start having like, who am I? Like, I'm in the body again of the 16-year-old. Am I the 16-year-old, or am I this thing that lives on forever? I was actually having a bit of probably a psyche split, a split in my own psyche, like kind of just like, what the hell? Like, who am I? I don't know who I am anymore. And I was actually like, I don't know who I am, but I knew to follow them because they seemed to clearly be in control. So we got out of this room, and we walked out of this room. We walked down a hallway, and then we moved into another room that was blacked out. I couldn't see what was in the room. They clearly made things black, and I couldn't see it. And the female being comes out, and she comes back in from this blackness, and she's holding a book, and literally a physical book of theirs. She opens it, and I see holograms coming out of the book, and I can see their script. And she's like, look at it. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I can't read this. And then as I look at it, it gets a little bit hypnotic, it gets a little bit powerful, and then it starts going zap, 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 and it goes into my consciousness. This book's essence and the information goes into me, and this essence of this book goes into me, and And then she closes the book. She puts some kind of psychic thing into my head, and she seems to bury this book deep into my head. That's it. And then we move. She doesn't talk about it. She basically says, well, this is for later, but that's kind of it. We move forward. And then it's like, go get your clothes. So I'm back in the medical room, but now I see those medical beings who I was freaked out about earlier. And I'm like, I'm not scared of them anymore. And I look at the medical being in the eye, and I'm like, no, I get it now. I'm like, oh, they're actually friendly. Like I kind of got it. I was like, no, these guys, I get it. Like they don't want to coddle. They're not interested in helping me feel better, but they're actually like nice in their way, and they're actually very intense about their job, but they're not mean. They're not nasty. And I kind of like had a whole thing about it. And I also was like, they're actually beautiful. I was fully altered. I fully now didn't see scary beings. I fully saw these beings were actually beautiful. Their eyes were like wild, and their facial, like now everything. I was terrified earlier. I was like enamored by them. I was like, wow, they're beautiful. I think these creatures are beautiful. I was sold. I was fully changed and sold. And that was it. We moved back. And as I was moving back, the female being puts an image in my head that I have a suitcase. So the suitcase is all about our agreement for the event that will occur in 1997, 4 years in the future. The suitcase is the psychic connection I have with the being. It's the book they put into me. It's the room in the experience in the white room. It's seeing my higher self and understanding our relationship. It's seeing it's everything. It's everything to make our agreement work properly. And so for them, they had given me a whole bunch of stuff, and they're like, "Fire you on your way." And for her, in my head, she's like, "It's like a suitcase you're holding. You're carrying a suitcase of all the stuff for us." And that was it. Basically, I get sent back. We come back here, and she's like, "We'll see you, but not for a bit." And she fires me back down onto the field, and I hear in my head the words, "Go home," like a big booming voice in my head, "Go home." And she wipes the memory, cleans out all the memory, even the sensations, the consciousness splitting, who am I, all these things are taken out. I do have a good feeling in my heart. I feel good. I feel great. But I don't know why I feel great. And I basically walk home as a 16-year-old teenager thinking I had just hung out with my friends and having no other feeling or thought about what had occurred that night. So that's the story. But this is where I analyze what actually occurred, because I'm writing about it, I'm analyzing it, trying to understand it and make the most of it, because it was a beautiful experience. But there was trauma, so don't think that this was all hunky-dory and rosy stuff. The experience of the White Room was the Rising. So, okay, this event that happened in 1997, they eventually call it the Rising. She doesn't call it the Rising here, but she says, what she just simply says is, your rising will occur. And it's like, your rising is about to happen. So I kind of hung on to that as a way to label this event that happened in December of 1997, because I never had a label for it until these events occurred, until I understood all this. So in that December 1997 event, the memory of my light, of my cells being light, was exactly how I felt when I left the White Room, that room that they put me into. It's the exact same memory. And it was clear to me that they controlled this memory, that they gave this experience to me, and then they wanted to put it on me as if it was something I came upon by reading a book and having some experiences in my life, as if I had done this to myself. And that's part of the agreement or the experiment, to see what happens. And who's the real me? I've journaled this because I was journaling this period of my life. When the rising occurred, I literally walked into the mirror and I was altered on the inside. My consciousness was a different energy. It's impossible to explain. Like, no one can understand this experience, and I can only just write about it to give as much as I possibly can. But in that, I was not 20 years old, and I'm literally looking at the mirror, and I'm like, I don't know whose face this is anymore. I can't understand this face. I knew that something had been altered on the inside, and I didn't know what. And that was the same feeling when I had that split. Who was I? Was I that 16-year-old self, or was I the me that lives on afterwards? And it's like those were after feelings that were part resonating of the memory when they opened it up. It was the stuff that came out. The sensations of unity. I was having escalating sensations of unity before this rising that occurred in 1997, and it was hypered up when I was going through it. The mountains and the land, where I was like, I could feel myself in those experiences, and it was, and the White Room was all about the sensations of unity and expansion of consciousness. A sense of God. Now, it's very religious to say the word God, and when I say that, I do mean my awareness is connected to something that is larger that I can rely on. It's just, I'm a part of that energy. I'm not trying to say moralized human. I have no religious background, so I'm okay to say the word God, but I know that for some it means a person. It means a guy with a beard and a lightning bolts and stuff. But I just mean that I had, during the rising, I had a sense that I actually felt, as a 20-year-old, I felt like I'd found God. I found that I'd found my consciousness was actually connected to something larger. And that's a distinct experience I had in the White Room as well, too, that I was connected and flying around, and I was connected to the thing, and it was a larger presence that was a part of me that I was, but it was this merging of that identity. So even though the White Room occurred in the year 1993, 4 years before the rising in 1997, I'm under the impression the beings controlled that memory, though I don't understand how. It seems to me my remaining contact with the beings before the rising was a slow and gentle process of embodying the wisdom of the experience of the White Room.
Okay. So thanks for watching my presentation if you watched the entire thing. Just for the record, I have 26 contact events, and this is contact event number 1. Most people can only wrap their head around even having one. The idea that you get 26 throughout your life is totally crazy. But as I mentioned in the book, it's actually quite normal to have lifetime contact events, and to sometimes, in some cases like mine, wake up in the middle of your life with all the memories kind of unraveling. And that is totally crazy. And I also wrote an essay on my website about awakening to obscured memories, really kind of outlining and detailing, you know, how hard it is to kind of wake up to that experience. So that is, you can see that on my website. Oh, also what's mentioned in this presentation is having alien genetics. And I have an essay there as well too, where you can explore my personal experience with that and some research I've done to see if that is even possible. So you can check that out if you want at jeffselver.com. That link is down below. So there are some things I'd like to mention. People are probably, for those who are even in the field, there's always this kind of question about what's going on with gray aliens, if they can get into people's heads, right? So do I think that there was deception involved here? And listen, I actually do a painstaking effort in my book saying that there's no doubt in my mind I was witnessing my higher self, because I'll have intuitive moments repeatedly throughout my story that it's part of this kind of intertwining adventure where I have to follow my heart, follow my intuition, making choices that seem against logic, and yet all my energy is like, do that thing, and then at the end is this result that is positive for me and obviously right for me. And so I become very attuned in time to that feeling of the higher self. And that's what that is. It's the personified higher self. It's the personified intuition, if you will. So this idea that gray aliens are somehow in my head, making me have those feelings and experiences, and then connecting it just, that doesn't seem likely. It seems very true to me that what I witnessed was actually my higher self, and that they were able to control the imagery actually. And I do explain in the book that gray aliens have actually shown, it was Susie Hansen in her book where she was showing the galaxy, the Milky Way, and they were able to go in the past, zoom into individual spots, and they'd be able to show a complex detail. And so that is something that I think more about what is going on here, that the beings are in dimensions, dimensional realms, which we know that's probably likely that they go into dimensions. So the afterlife being one of those dimensions does seem very likely also, because they're still trying to figure out how the brain functions, and they're leaning now towards more of a quantum consciousness idea. And so these ideas that's where the afterlife is coming from, and the experience of people's life after death or near-death experiences or past lives, that it's all originating from kind of a quantum consciousness kind of self, then the Greys having access to that and then being able to zoom into individual past lives or zoom into individual higher self experiences might be more likely than not, from everything that's coming out around the information around gray aliens and this stuff and this technology that they have. So for me, no, there's no deception at all. It was my higher self, and it speaks volumes again to what happened here, and it's just a part of the story, and you'll see it intertwines with all these events that occur in my life. Another interesting feature to mention is there was an event in the 40s and 50s, the gray aliens. Throughout my contact events, I have 3 other contact events that they will hint at that they have communicated with humans at a certain point in the past, and then choices were made based on those, based on the interactions between humans and gray aliens. And I lean toward the 1954 Eisenhower meeting. There's a lot. I have an essay on my website, and you can go check that out yourself. I try to do as much as I can to find the actual evidence for this event, and it looks to me like something actually occurred, some kind of, agreement, if you will, and that the abduction phenomenon and the choice of hybrids and where everything is going, as far as what it looks like it is, the kind of behind the scenes with aliens, is all around a possible agreement made in the 50s. And of course, as I'd explained in the book, there was obviously some choice being made based on the effect humans were having on this, A, the destruction of the planet, but B, on the other realms that humans aren't really aware of, and that were making damage on these other spaces. And then gray aliens came down, interacted with some type of government that made an agreement, and then it guaranteed how the next several decades would go. Anyway, I do have other moments and other contact events that are in my book that really do explain and kind of lighten up that the gray aliens are saying that they're talking and communicating with some kind of body of leadership in on Earth. So that's really significant when we start looking and understanding what the relationship is here with humans and gray aliens. Another piece to mention, so how on earth did all the awareness that I had kind of get sealed up? And I lean towards, in my book, and I eventually learned in these contact events, I have an object put in my nose, and it does seem to look like the beings, again, very well known within the field is that implants do occur, and the idea that there might be some kind of object in my mind that the beings know how to control and can box things in, take experiences and then shove them away for later. As I mentioned, it does seem to be that whatever occurred to me in 1993, the beings were able to use that in 1997. So it's totally crazy, and possibly, again, some of the most unbelievable parts of my story, but I have to stick with what happened to me, because what happened to me is what happened to me. So okay, buy my book if you liked the story, if you thought this was fascinating. This is just the beginning, and my story covers it all. It covers all the details, how it affected me and how it kind of moved through my life, all these contact events. So the story is just starting. So thanks for joining. Hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.